First of all, thank you very much for all of the help that you give us in so many ways, financially, supporting us by practicing here, by practicing online, by just showing up as a practitioner and sharing your practice with our Sangha, our spiritual community. The title of this morning's Dharma talk comes from classical text, the Soto lineage of Japanese Buddhism, called the Book of Serenity. And it is from verse 20. And it shows up in different places. Could you say the other place that this similar thing shows up?
I heard it in the recorded, the records of Tongshan.
Okay. So it shows up different places and shows up also in the Korean lineages, because the basic teaching there is going to show up in different words. And that is, I'm going to read that since my memory is not dependable. Very simple. Dijon asked Fayan, "Where are you going?" Fayan said, "Around on pilgrimage." Dijon said, "What is the purpose of pilgrimage?" Fayan said, "I don't know." Dijon said, "Not knowing is most intimate." Pardon my getting choked up, because it isn't just one statement about something. Contemplate this the rest of your life. All it's really saying is you don't have to know anything, but you have to study everything. You have to listen to everything. You have to receive everything that shows up in your kitchen, in your country, in your neighborhood, in your family, in your third cousin. Listen. Stop responding with some kind of a interpretation of everything. Knock it off. How can you do that? Train your mind. Sit down, hold still, and watch the insanity, to use the strongest word I can think of, in your own mind. Or you could just say discontinuity. You could also say asymmetry. There's a lot of shady words that point in the same direction, but they give a lot of room for interpretation. Use those. Or you could just go right to the chase. It's crazy what happens in the mind. Conflicting emotions about the nature of what is real and what is unreal. Find out yourself. Nobody can give this to you. The greatest teacher, the Buddha, could not actually say it in such a way that you would just, if he could just say it, then you could just understand it. Couldn't do that because it is intimate, and it is a knowing that goes far beyond the relative knowing as this is a stick and this is a sound. That kind of knowing is available to everyone, and people use it to beat each other up and go to war and go to peace, which is the other side of war. Don't go anywhere. Don't go to war. Don't go to peace. Straighten up. But first you might want to sit down, then straighten up. Look at the wall. Just look at something where nothing is happening and watch what the mind keeps tumbling forth and displaying. Most intimate. What an understatement. There isn't anyone else but you. If you think there is, you'll continue to spin and look for other. You look for happiness. Don't wear yourself out. Your happiness is right here in front of you. If you think otherwise, what? You'll continue to spin and grab at this and push at that and think about that, reflect on this, and speculate with your neighbor and flap your jaws. Don't do it. Find out who you are, so there's no doubt. It's just a basic, a case of mistaken identity. And unless you see that first, you'll just come up with a bunch of psychologies about it. Like Sigmund Freud did, like Abraham Maslow did, like Alfred Adler did, like all the philosophers down through the centuries, highly intelligent men and women who stayed on the surface of the consciousness where all the thoughts are. And then go back and forth and think about, what do you think about this? And publishing books. And then the political spectrum, that's another area of astonishing insanity that will actually murder other people based on what they think and what someone thinks, and then argue about if it's justified or not. It's not even justified to lift your hand. You can't justify this. You should be ashamed of yourself for lifting your hand. But if your hand lifts, that's different. Not knowing is most intimate. Not knowing. It's like your digestive tract knows exactly what to do. As I said several times, you were put in charge of your digestive tract, you'd starve to death. You wouldn't know what to do with it. Go ahead, disagree with me. I can take questions on that if you have them. Yes, sir, Sanho.
What is serenity if not peace?
Is not what?
What is serenity if not peace?
It is peace. I'm just saying don't go to it. It's already the case. If you go to it, you actually leave the actual serenity for your idea, your concept, your belief, your explanation, your definition, and your otherness of leaving something that is distressed or something that is peaceful. That's when I say don't go to war, don't go to peace. Peace is right here. If there is peace, this is it. And it might look like warfare. It might look like confusion, but just look at it. Just receive it. Whatever's showing up is just receive that as it is. No condiments on the sandwich. Amazing how terrible I was feeling 20 minutes ago. And now energy is coming from somewhere just so I can do this. And when I get up and leave the room, I'll probably fall apart. We're not separate. You have a question? Go ahead.
Geez, I'm buying. What is the practice of not knowing?
Knowing would have to be the practice of watching the knowing, watching how the knowing comes up this way and goes up that way, and then it turns this way, and just observe it. It turns the corner, it waves its flag, it says, come on, I got something for you over here around the corner. Knowing. Yes, sir.
I'm buying. I think it was Jude asked to talk on or a question on Friday about contemplation.
Yes.
Is there any practice of contemplating what you're talking about that we could use or work with? Bowing.
Might be better to contemplate this verse. But there might be something there. I've talked about this in different ways. Might be something I've said in the past. Can you ask the question again? See what comes up.
Geez, I'm wondering about it, how to actively try to work with not knowing, particularly in the midst of what can show up as certainty or feels pretty immovable about it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, just look at that. Yes, just whatever shows up as knowing or not movable, or just look at it. Don't add on that it's not movable. don't add on that it's certain. But if you do add on that it's certain, then stop right there. When I say stop, I'm saying just look at the where you've added. Just look where you added something on that it's not movable, and just don't leave that for something else. And it's a very subtle area of consciousness. I know you've been meditating for years. You know exactly what I'm saying. All of you do, probably. It's a very subtle area of consciousness, and it's very delicate in that area. And if you just look at the I sometimes call it the leading edge of consciousness, where it's just turning into a finger pointing back. You're receiving the pratitya samutpada, the dependent origination that has been talked about as a teaching of the Buddha. You've watched that show up in the ears, show up in the nose, tongue, body, mind, everything. The consciousness is just being flooded with apparent otherness coming our way. And then at some area we turn back and describe it or point to it or try to write words on it. And just if you just watch that, it may persist, but this is where the word patience comes from. Don't do anything unless you have to. And sometimes you just have to add on and you have to subtract and divide and do the math all over the place. But it's always about awareness. So it's about awareness that you're trying to make your life different. You're trying to improve. You can improve the ego relatively, but fundamentally that is not the spiritual path. That's a mundane path of getting better, healing, all those other crazy words. Go ahead. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Andre Bowden, is not knowing the same as a mystery? Bowden.
Good question. It's close, but it's a mystery is very, very, seductive. It's a mystery. Don't do that. If I were to come in and enter into that the way I think you're asking it, I would say drop that word and just go back to the original word, confused. Be confused. Because there's no one who's confused. There's just confusion. Confusion is dependently arisen. There's just confusion. There's no personhood there. Can't find a self there. Yes, sir.
Andy, I had a similar question. What is the difference between not knowing and doubt?
In some traditions, there's even I think it's in Rinzai Zen, called the Great Doubt. You remember the teacher?
Wait a minute, Basho.
Basho. I don't know, but something about actually developing a great doubt, big uncertainty about everything. Doubt. So there's some similarity there. I would think it would be personalized in each person. Each person would have their own area there to look at. The not knowing, it might turn into something slightly different, like doubt and so on. More?
Andy Bowing, going back to your response to Andre's question, what is is there a difference between not knowing and confusion?
Not knowing is just an open consciousness, whereas confusion is there's some kind of a spinning and twisting and trying to sort out, and the identity part of the consciousness, the ego, the narcissism, the seventh consciousness, as described in the Yogacara tradition, is making something of it instead of just there's no willingness to just receive. There's some kind of a fooling around in space. They're twisting things up. Ego is, put it bluntly, ego is getting some identity by being the one who's confused. I'm just confused. Does that sound like a cat?
Mickey Mouse.
Close. We had a really deep talk about 40 years ago, Mickey and I. Didn't think so. Go ahead.
Being Valley, I may be just noticing that the Buddhist teachings are full of translations of something that looks more original or root. And so I'm wondering how to work with those translations without leaving my own behind.
You're gonna have to say a little bit more so I can get a feeling for what it is you're even asking about. Translations? Are you talking about translation from one language to another? Are you talking about a translation from one way of understanding to another way of understanding, but still in the same language? What are you asking?
Well, I'll try this example, like when studying the Diamond Sutra, you have the Diamond Sutra and then you have all these translations.
Okay.
We can align ourselves with someone's translation or try to see what they're seeing.
Just like Shasta Abbey for Dogen's Shobogenzo, that one. Tanahashi, yes.
So I'm wondering how to work with other people's translations of things and also include my own.
What is your own? Where's your book? You actually have another understanding of these? In every case or just a few? Go ahead, please, go ahead.
Being knowing in the way of describing or understanding might be spoken of differently from person to person, even within a group. I guess to me that seems like a type of translation. And that's
Okay, I'm still not, is anyone else tracking what she is saying? Go ahead, Sano.
Sanho Bauer. So there's a linguistic interpretation, the Chinese to the Japanese to the English. Those might differ, but then our interpretation of that interpretation might also differ.
Is that helpful?
I think
I'm just rephrasing the question.
that fits.
Okay, then what did Sano just help you out with?
What did he help you? I don't know.
How dare you? Yes, he did. Yeah, Sano always helps me. Yeah, but you help me too. So I really want to respond to your question, but I'm a little, I can get to it a little bit, but I'm not sure. If you have it.
When you're bowing, is it a matter of trusting the translator? We've had some.
Is that close to what?
It fits, yeah.
And I'm with you there in that area. Like if I were going to have to pick between Tanahashi and Shasta Abbey, I would pick Tanahashi. But Shasta Abbey, I think, helps us because it says, oh, you could go this way with that. You could go this way. I wouldn't mind having several, like we do with the Samdhina Mochana Sutra. I think we have 3 we work with, and when we're talking about the 30 verses of Asabandha, don't we have 12 translations? Who knows? You know, you would know.
At least 12.
At least 12 translations of just that 30 verses, and I think we use. Don't we use all of them a little bit?
And are we creating our own?
Are you accusing?
No,
We are. Yes, I think we are. I think there's something to that. Now we need to publish a book.
He's on mine, just along the lines of what Bean's asking. So in the midst of all those different interpretations, which can be quite contrary in some cases, what does it mean to include our own intelligence? In what way do we include our own intelligence in the midst of somebody telling us what it means? Bowing.
So don't conclude. It's almost like it becomes so obvious that the conclusion is just obvious. It's choiceless. But I would say don't unless you have to conclude a particular dynamic or a construct or explanation of some aspect of consciousness. some aspect of the way confusion is operating in consciousness to keep us further pushed under the rug, so we don't know what the hell's going on, then just don't conclude. So because if you conclude, as soon as you come to any conclusion about anything, even if it's accurate, relatively accurate, then that stops it just stops any further investigation of that area, which there may not be any further investigation, but you won't know that if you're interested. You are more interested in concluding than actually knowing the truth more.
Geez, I'm bowing. What do the teachings look like when we are no longer trying to understand, or coming back to the title, when we're not knowing them?
Not knowing.
What is the intimacy of not knowing?
It cannot be put in words. It's heartbreaking, because you immediately see the all pervasiveness of consciousness all over, not just this world, all over, and you feel that, and you know that, and everything that's going on everywhere, you feel that, you know that. It's that kind of it's a knowing that there's no content to it. John
So using the example of the two primary interpretations of the Shobogenzo, is one of them more right than the other, or is the truth somewhere in the middle?
Say that, turn that around, say it opposite.
Is one better, or is it somewhere between the two?
Are you asking me that?
Yes,
Even though it's the opposite?
yes.
Okay, yes. This is what Unyo does when she doesn't know what's going on. She just says yes. It's very frustrating. Very, very. So I don't mean to add to the confusion, but I'm saying that that's an area where the consciousness needs to have as little as few guardrails as possible. So there's the possibility of a complete opening happening there, where the consciousness just no longer is fearful, balled up into a knot of me, and my stuff, and I need to be right, and what if I'm wrong? So I think that's what's showing up there. More, Sanho.
Sanhobo, and so why do we focus on one of the interpretations versus the Shasta Abbey?
So I don't know as we focus so much. I think we might turn towards that one more. I'm not here at all of the Shobogenzo studies. Go ahead.
We read those side by side, kind of
Okay.
in a unique way that we don't do in other book studies. Like they both get the same.
Okay.
same,
Sanho, are you attending those book studies?
Sanhobo, and I've attended some. I was actually referring to you specifically telling me to focus on one versus the other.
You have witnesses?
No.
You're an attorney and you don't have witnesses? How dare you? Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Me?
You.
Oh, nothing, just that I'll say now that even I wasn't an eyewitness.
That is just too funny. You got that package somewhere where you can just pull it out of your holster? No. Okay, so I just think it's so situational that sometimes we really need to focus on a particular, just like on the 30 verses. Sometimes we really need to go and read, after we've read Anaker's translation, we really need to go and read, was it Wutai Mountain, which is much kind of a simple approach. The thing doesn't have the structural and conceptual outlay, but it's just easier to connect with it. At least it is for me sometimes. I think it's situational, and I don't least my intention is, and it doesn't the way Shoto is responding there, it doesn't sound like you're doing that. Does someone feel like we're just locking down? Is there anyone here who's never missed a study of the Shobogenzo on Wednesday at noon? Have you missed them? You never missed one?
Rarely, but I'm.
How many did you miss? 5? Because there's been how many in the last 5 years?
260.
So we just, the important thing is to study, as I've said many times, not to understand. It's just study it. The understanding will just come out of the carpeting. It'll come out, it'll fall out of the ceiling. Yes.
You're bowing. It seems like, you said before that you don't like a translation that just kind of hands it to us.
Yes.
So it seems like you go for the more poetic and less concrete translations. And
I do.
Is that so that our own intelligence can work with that? And
What are you asking me? Are you asking me anything? Are you saying something?
is there a preference for less detail and more poetic interpretations?
Hi. What?
Is there a preference for the more poetic, less constructed, detailed translations?
I don't know if there's a preference, but sometimes it just in that area just seems to feel more supportive to what we're trying to understand. Well, that's why especially the Chinese, Japanese tradition is full of poems. Not that the Tibetan doesn't have some of that also. That's quite a bit. 100,000 songs of Milarepa and so on.
Not yet. Owen?
Wando,
What about, how is the sky intimate?
how is the what?
Sky,
Sky? You're not separate from it. You're not separate from anything. It just looks that way. And it looks intensely like you're over here and everything else is over there. But if you begin to see what this is, you actually see, feel, smell, taste, touch, think, all the receptors you have, and they're not producers. Sense of touch doesn't produce anything. I mean, it can, I can touch this and then something's produced there. You don't actually think, there's no thinker. You don't actually think. This is an illusion created by dependent origination. And it's astonishingly convincing, especially when it is run by all the fuel of passion, grasping, aggression, pushing, and ignorance. It's just convincing that there's something else going on. There's something you don't know. There's something you could get that you're not getting, that you weren't allowed to get, or all the other stories that can happen. And then when you have stories, the dependent origination that shows up as a self, this personhood begins to make use of that, you could say. And it just keeps throwing story on top of story. If somebody's really upset about something, they think they're right about something, they're not about to listen to you. They'll just throw stories at you. Yeah, but what you said, well, yeah, you're saying it now, but how about what you said 10 minutes ago? Remember that? I mean, the other person will polarize it, and then you get tempted to defend yourself or chime in or attack or shut down, which is, there's passion, aggression, and ignorance. It's your own personal classroom right in front of you for understanding dependent origination. intimately. But the most intimate is seeing the space in which those occur, which is what? Not knowing. Passion isn't knowing. Aggression isn't knowing. Ignorance isn't knowing. But the space in which those occur. That's when the consciousness is actually amazingly, almost miraculously. There's no one to let go, but somehow something got detached and there's just consciousness only. And then when that shows up, then the vow of the bodhisattva takes over, and then the vow swallows you, or whatever's left of you. And you're totally dedicated to others, even though there aren't any. But as long as there's others who think there are others, then they're suffering. You need to help them more.
It seems like sky or space or openness is the opposite of intimate. And yet when I ask about sky, what is intimate about the sky, you point back at this.
There's no difference between you and the sky. There's differentiation, which is the consciousness that is tangled up in knots and in a fist and is insisting on its personhood as opposed to otherhood or otherness, self and other, subjective, objective. It insists on that, but it's not real. What is real? Find out. What you will find, if I may say, is there are no separate people or things or anything. Nothing is separate from. It's separated just by being in a contaminated realm, which is the human realm, or any of the other 6 realms. More.
How is not no, I'm not separate, intimate.
It's probably not, probably not. So you got me there. If there's no one left, then there's no intimacy. Intimacy is still path. There's ground, suffering. There's path, awareness. 500 years later, awareness. 15 more lifetimes later, awareness. And then everything comes apart, completely falls apart. And there's just this, not separate. There isn't even any more awareness. There isn't anything more. You're welcome. Yes, sir.
Bowing. Does intention direct us to intimacy? Bowing.
Yes. Don't ask me how.
Bowing. You often tell us to return to the intention.
I do.
Is that?
Are you doing that?
Yes.
Good. Good idea.
Yeah, what is the connection between returning to that intention and intimacy?
What is it? What?
Connection.
What is it you want to know? You don't know what you want to know? That's not bad. Okay, that's progress. Tokugawa.
Bowing. Is seeing not separate still part of the illusion?
Yes, completely. There isn't anything but this, and even that's an illusion. Thank you. Very good question, young lady.
Can show this illusion.
Yes. Yes, if you have some kind of insight into you're one with everything, some of those can be overwhelmingly powerful. Especially if you take psilocybin, which I don't recommend, but I'm not against. Somebody wants to do that, go ahead. Take whatever you want. What are you thinking of? You're not, oh, okay. Yes, Johan.
玉红报应, you just said don't include. Don't include.
Don't include.
Yes. Do you mean the awareness when we
Conclude.
Include?
No, conclude.
Conclude? Yes. Are you saying the awareness when we make a conclusion? 报应.
Yes. Well, I'm not saying that you wouldn't sometimes need to do that. You have to conclude that when you're walking, trying to get out of the house, you need to conclude on a very subtle form of conclusion that that's the door and that's a wall. Otherwise, you walk into the wall. So you have to conclude. It's very subtle, but subtle conclusion is kind of built into the illusion of being in a room in the first place. You would walk through doorways and you would close the door behind you. Otherwise, the heat bill would go up. So very simple kind of conclusions going on. So when I'm saying don't conclude, I'm saying when you're working with a mind stream in such a way that you're trying to understand the nature of the passion, aggression, ignorance, hope, and fear, right and wrong, pride and jealousy and envy and all that stuff that's roiling around in the mind stream, which it often is, don't conclude. Just watch it. Just stay in the front row. My image that I often use, but I think it's valuable. It's been helpful to me. And I don't know if somebody told me about this or if I thought it up. It doesn't matter. Stay in the front row and watch the stage play because that's what it is. It's unreal. But it sure seems real.
Thank you, 报应.
You're welcome. Yes.
Beyond Valley, can the truth be translated by humans?
What? Can you paraphrase that somehow?
Can the
Translated
truth
by-
be translated by spoken or written word?
What does she want to know? What does she want?
Yes.
Yep. Can you?
I can try.
Go ahead.
The way that I understand it is, can the truth be expressed in words? Is that seem to be?
Like that.
That's pretty close right there. If you understand what those words are, and those are translated out of Chinese, it would be out of the Chinese, but it's pretty close. It's a powerful. I can't hardly read it because it's reminding me of of the area that I have to be careful not to go into that totally, or I'm speechless and I'm helpless. This as a human form, I can't do anything. Can't even walk. It's devastating to ego, and there's still ego happening here. But I haven't gotten rid of anything. But it's just ego's unreal. It's a clown. It's a fool. It's still here. But when we start looking at that area starts to not come. It's just intense. I don't know what else to say about it. Is there something else I'm missing there, or we're missing together? No.
Beyond Valley, like to just keep trying with that word translation, and maybe I'm just using it completely wrong.
It's a very relative term. You say this and that translates into that and that translates into so. But you can't, if you want to come back to it, can you translate the truth? I would say no, that it always is bouncing around on the surface of the water. It doesn't go down deep. There's no deep dive there. So there's still some kind of jabberwocky going on, language, this and that, and this and that. it looks this way, it looks that way, it looks this way, it looks that way. And some of that language is by some people who are just born adepts with language are amazingly able to describe things that seemed indescribable until they started talking about it, just like Vasubandhu's description of duality. It's amazing and very, very magnetizing to bring you in using concepts, but to bring you into a deep understanding relatively, of the nature of that particular conflict.
Yunbei, is this what you're doing, bringing us into a deep understanding relatively?
I guess I'm trying to help you see the truth yourself. And so I don't have the talent, the skill, the ability to speak in the way that great teachers speak. But I just do the best I can with what I understand, what I know, and what I'm looking at. I always say, I don't teach. I've been taught a lot of things, and I've studied a lot, but I don't really teach out of it. I don't. It's like this not knowing is intimate. That's what I'm teaching out of. Not that I am getting a credential from it so much, but that's how it feels. It feels like I don't know anything. I get up and come out of the hojo, walk to that door and walk in here and come up. There's just the altar. There's just this. There's just the time. I sit down, there's just you. And that's all there is to it. And then I have a topic and I just talk about it. But I don't really know anything. I don't store any, I don't even store the text, the verse number 20 out of the Book of Serenity. I can't remember any of that. I cannot tell you what any of those other verses are, and I read it. And that's a really challenging book. Have you read that? It's very challenging to take what's there and say anything more about it. All you can do, because it sticks you in such a way that you are saying, no, you're going to look at what I've just said, and that's it. You don't get to go and write your own book about what I just said. Yeah. In fact, that would be a really good idea for the monk talks next time. Is everybody could get assigned one of those verses, and they could give a book report talk on it. Doesn't that sound exciting? Talk about torture. It wouldn't be probably wouldn't be torture, but it would be challenging to do that, because what does the ego want to do? It wants to make sense out of it. Are there any questions off in Sudetenland or wherever you guys are all at?
玉红报应.
Go ahead, Yuhong. Then
You just mentioned
David, you're next. David. Go ahead, Yuhong.
you just mentioned that there are lots of metaphors in poems and a poetic teaching, especially in Chinese and Japanese cultures. So I was taught that way at my Chinese classes in elementary and middle school, which involved more thinking. That's how it's taught when we learn poems. My question is, how can I look at the teaching without taking away by my own thinking and intelligence? Bowing.
The best, not knowing what it's like to be you Hung, but knowing you and having studied together for a while, and also slowly becoming more and more familiar with your language, Mandarin, by studying it. And I are both studying Mandarin and have been for a few years. I would say just repetition. Probably one of the best things you could do is to read, and I would recommend reading some of the works of the translations of Red Pine, where he's the Buddhist hermits that he's translating their poems from Chinese into English. Have you read any of those?
A little bit. So you're suggesting to read in English?
Both.
Both, okay.
Read the bilingual translation, some of those texts. That might be a good start. And also you could read the translation also by Red Pine, isn't it, Bodhidharma's? Red Pine of the Bodhidharma, the bloodstream sermon, which is available. Read the Chinese version, and right there with the English version. He does our Mandarin teacher says that he does a very, very good job of pulling the meaning out of there and putting it in English, so that we have some access to what was said back in the 6th century. Really astonishing. What do you say? You have anything else to say about that? Anything else?
Well, and just that with our Mandarin teacher, it's like she's presenting her own translation of it. And it sounds like with Yu Hong too, just having that cultural background is so enriching.
Oh.
Thank you, Bowing. It's very helpful, Bowing.
Yes. Navid.
It seems to the unconscious mind that not having reference points is not functional. Is it possible not to have any reference points?
Yes, but further, I would say to have the reference points come up as they show up in dependent origination. In other words, as they're necessary. They're necessary to walk from one room to the next. And somebody says, in a restaurant, comes up to your table and says, "Can I take your order?" And relatively, you're going to work with that as it shows up, and you say, "Yes, I'd like some ham and eggs," or something like that, and coffee cream, or whatever you would say. So it's a very, very relative thing. But the reference points are not. You're not creating, trying to establish reference points to protect an imaginary self, parikalpada. So you're just working with dependent origination, paratantra, and you are seeing. If you do this and thoroughly, so you really, really see what this is, then you have parinishpana, which is the perfected nature. This is the three own beings, which come out of several texts, the Samdhinarmachana Sutra, and the Lankavatara Sutra, and where else? So but the reference points will be there, but as long as you're a living being, which it looks like you are, you probably have a few years left. No promises. I'm not guaranteeing anything, but you can just see the reference points. See how you can actually you can dance with the reference points that show up in the world. No demand. No remorse. No demand. Things don't have to stay here. This does not mean that if something that you like or enjoy or get attached to, that attachment you can't feel that as that slowly goes another direction. That doesn't mean you won't feel that suddenly you're above everything. That's ego. When you're aloof, you're above everything. Nothing ever bothers you anymore because you're so enlightened. No, you're still a human being. You're still experiencing passion, aggression, ignorance. The third mark of existence of nirodha or cessation doesn't mean that, at least my understanding of it. I'm not saying nobody else might teach it a different way. They probably do. I'm sure they do. I'm convinced that they do. I've read that they do. And I hear that they do. And I suppose that they do. Wulong, black dragon, lay it on me.
Wulong Bowing. Is there a knowing that we can trust?
Don't trust anything. That's trust. That's the kind of trust that you're asking about. Don't trust anything, and you'll know what you need to give the benefit of the doubt to. You know that something shows up, you don't see all of its parts, you don't see its underbelly, so to speak. So you give it some time. You're not threatened by it, even though it may be trying to threaten you. But you're not particularly threatened because you know that who you are can't be harmed or damaged. Who you are fundamentally is not threatened. It just, I don't know what another word to say. It's just not in danger. Who you think you are is probably being threatened all the time by people's opinions or your own opinions or your upbringing or your conditioning, your presumption about this or this or this or that or that or that.
Well, I'm bowing. Is not threatened. Can that be a form of knowing?
I think rather than it's a form of knowing, it's just that if you begin to see who you are, and I don't know if that can show up all at once or if it's gradual. I can't speak for everyone. I don't know the karma that you have to go through to even, buy a pack of cigarettes. I can't see who and what you are relatively. So, but you can, and I would say, don't take anything for granted. Don't accept, don't reject, don't look away, and practice that. That doesn't mean don't have a cup of coffee, or that doesn't mean you go for a walk. Don't smoke cigarettes, though. I wasn't implying that. That's just what showed up.
Or whiskey?
Yeah, no whiskey. Stop it. And so so I would say that's kind of a side. It's like it's not the goal particularly. It's a way of talking about it, but there's kind of if you train your mind to see clearly, you do begin to see what this is. You just notice that nothing can scare you. You're not threatened by anything. You're not even threatened by the imminence of your own death. It's just not a problem because you see what this is. You know what it is. You don't need anybody, including your teacher, including me or anybody, to come up and say, yep, I think you're doing fine. I think you're attaining enlightenment. You don't need that. It's just not concerning at all because you're looking at what you have been looking for. And you know who you are. You don't have doubts about who you are anymore.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What is a spiritual community?
Spiritual community is a group of people that work together to support, in our case, the teacher and the teaching, which is what we do here, and each other, so we can all practice together. And it can be difficult because the community itself is made up of all kinds of different people coming from different kinds of karma, different kinds of causes and conditions that they're dealing with in their mind stream and in their life stream and so on. And supporting each other. Participate, that's the word I would participate. Just connect with it in some way. It doesn't have to be dedicating your whole life to it and being of service and showing up so everybody sees what a wonderful practitioner you are. You're so supportive of everyone. It doesn't have to be that, but it needs to be some. There needs to be something there, especially for you as a monk. You need to support other practitioners, other monks. Do you feel like you're doing that? Good. Anything else?
What do you mean by support?
Anything from, if you can, financial. If you can't do that, then just study together, ask questions. We're studying, like we were talking about the different translations of Dogen. Excuse me. Interact when you're studying with that and participate in that study rather than just excuse me, just listen to hard going. Yes, so that's what I would say. And then participate in the SAMU or the work practices, do something there, whatever you can. You have a full-time job, so you can't quite do what other people can do, but you could find 10, 15 minutes somewhere to vacuum the entryway or something like that. And I think you do stuff like that to some extent, don't you? Well, that's still something. We're not measuring it. It's just that what the intention to do to help is what is important, not how much you help. Now, some people that are doing nothing but just living here, aren't doing anything, they have no work or anything like that, probably are going to at least ask them. But even with them, there's no demands. They're not saying you need to help. We don't develop a bunch of stories about who's helping, who's not. I don't, as long as I'm alive, there's not going to be any supercharged evaluation of anybody. Just like we don't test people to study the Dharma. It's not a good idea to everybody studies, and then we at the end of the month everybody has a test on see if they can remember what Dogen said or remember what I said. I would say forget everything I said. I think I've said it many times, have I not? Just don't worry about it. Study it. Attend these talks. Don't worry about remembering it. And you can always go to Union's to find out what I said, because she writes everything down. Should you do that? I would leave that up to you. Some people really, it helps to write things down. I think Trunk Rinpoche also recommended that his students to take notes, and I did often. Well,
Do you mind? What do you mean by working together?
Communication, cooperation, collaboration, working together. You have we have a common goals here to just keep the facility open, make sure that the electrical situation works so it doesn't electrocute anybody. Make sure that we can get on the internet. I mean, I could go on that, but you already know all this. I'm not sure what it is that you're actually asking me, because isn't it kind of obvious that you would need to help other people that are here practicing with your teacher? That your teacher relates to you where you're at as best I can. Maybe not the best teacher, but I do the best I can, and I relate to everyone else who has a personal connection with me. Spent a lot of time doing that, and I would say, help all those people. And how you help them would show up situation. It might not be much. Further? Thank you for those questions. Yes.
When you're vowing in terms of not knowing in our book studies, there are a lot of times that I don't know what we've just read. And sometimes I just feel like giving up and say, oh, I'll never know what this is. When is a deep not knowing is there a difference between penetrating that not knowing and just giving up?
So don't give up, but just not know. There's no maintenance happening there. You just continue to just receive that feeling of not knowing. Unless I'm missing what you're asking about. It just have a willingness to study something and maybe not be clear about it. This is why we study this material over and over. I don't know if we've got all the way through the Shobogenzo. How would we go so slow? It's been 8 years. You would say that. 8 years is good though, isn't it? I mean, that's isn't 8 half of 16? What have I got wrong there? Are we coming to the end of this class? It's feeling like the moon has just changed signs or something. What's happened? You know? Okay. Is there a final question, Jishin?
Thank you. Jishin bowing. Is there anything that ego can know without producing its own version of it? Bowing.
That's a very good question, and I would say, probably not. It can know some things, but it's not going. There's always a construction and a presumption about what it's looking at. So when it looks at something, it doesn't know what's there. If it knew what's there, if the ego knew what was there, it would vanish because it would see that everything it looks at is showing that it doesn't exist. It would mirror back. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, bowing.
Go ahead.
You say don't trust anything. When you say that, I think, is there anything I need to trust on the path? My trust sometimes shows up as the part of, I don't know. I feel like I have to trust that to keep sometimes going on the path. Is there anything I can trust? Deb bowing.
Well, I think you can just keep going. In that sense, I would say I don't think that's a end all, situation. Say, but be a little bit suspicious when you're working in that area. Now just keep going. As you said, you need to do a little bit of that to just keep going on the path. Please do. It's your situation. I don't know what it's like to be you. And I often say that to people who are very close to me and have difficulty with what's things that are happening in their life. You'll have to actually let me know what you need to do, and very unlikely that I'm going to disagree with that.
Thank you, Deb bowing.
Very welcome. Very good. I think we can close. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shoto, and I am a monk at SokukoJi, where I am committed to training my mind under the guidance of my teacher, Sokuzan. We rely on your support for much of what we offer here. This includes building projects to create space for full-time and part-time practice residents. Thank you for your help.